Hey, Scott here from Everything Bill Collins. Got some new records in the mail today. Some rare stuff. Some stuff that's like hard to find. Certainly hard to find in traditional record stores. Now, full disclosure, and you know if you've been watching this channel for a little while, I don't like to do this, but full disclosure, I bought these off of Discogs. I was kind of just in that mode where sitting around one night, and I hadn't been to a record store in a long time, so maybe like 3 or 4 days. And I was just getting that itch to get something new, have something new come in the mail, order something. And so I decided I placed this order. I was just shopping for some records. And I found a guy, I don't know about you if you shop on Discogs this way, but like I look for a record. If they have a record that I want, then I'll go into their collection to see if they have other records that I also want, as a way to kind of make the package worth it, because you pay a kind of a flat rate for shipping. So you might as well throw in some other records and get a deal. So I found 2 records that I think are very rare in the Genesis and Phil Collins world. They're rare on vinyl, and they're rare in this original format that I found. So I'm going to show you both, and one is kind of ironic. So the first record that I got was Both Sides. And this is an original pressing. I see there's not a lot of these. This looks a lot, by the way, like to the 2016 one, which I'll show you in a second. In fact, the track listing is the same. It's double-sided. Sorry, it's 2 records, 4 sides. This is a record that wouldn't be able to fit on one disc. And so even the 2016 remaster and the original copy is in 2 discs. This is in decent shape. The record is in perfect shape. The case is the packaging is a little bit old. This is from 1993. It's the original artwork, though, you can tell, right? So here's the 2016 version, which is actually really hard to find. This 2016 version, I've heard, on vinyl is hundreds of dollars. And if you didn't get it, because they haven't reprinted them. So they printed these in 2016-ish. It took about a year or so. They were a little bit behind. I think they were supposed to come out in 2015. It didn't drop until early 2016, this in face value. And then it took until the rest of the year to get all the way up to Going Back and Testify. If you didn't get stuff like Going Back, Testify, Dance into the Light, and Both Sides, you're out of luck, because they did a one run, maybe 10,000 copies, 5,000. I don't know. It wasn't that many. And then they didn't do, as far as I know, they didn't do a repress. However, but seriously, Face Value was done with Phil's older face on a picture disc. Then it was pressed again. But Seriously was done again, and the second time was done on a turquoise vinyl. They've done No Jacket Required a couple times. They did it on clear vinyl, and then they did it on orange, or vice versa. Anything after But Seriously. So and then Hello, I Must Be Going is always kind of available. So they may have done another run of that. They didn't seem to do a special edition of that. But that one you can still find, so they probably did another pressing of that. And again, this is with the new masters. Was it remixes, or is it just masters? I think it's just masters, but I don't know if there was some remixing involved. I think it's just remastering. You let me know if there. I'm not 100% sure. Somebody in the comments recently said it was just a remaster from the stereo mixes, but did they open up the sessions? I mean, Nick would have had access to all the sessions, so would he have done that? I don't know. I don't really think so. So this copy with Phil's old face that was printed in 2015 but didn't come out into the world in 2016, it's a heavier record. I believe it's probably 180, whereas this one I think is like I won't say 145, maybe 150, 160. Everything else is the same, though. The artwork is exactly the same, other than the photo. This maybe is a little creamier. This is a little bit more white. The difference between this one, though, is it's got this like rubbery texture. It's a really great, all of the records from this remaster had a really cool feeling to it. The problem is that when it's white, it does pick up some scuff marks from the record itself or other vinyls in your collection. And so that's why a lot of people don't love white vinyl, or like white or light colored artwork, is because it scuffs easy. So that's why I keep it in this bag. But this is, this one is not that rubbery feeling, and you also got dirt on it. So it's more just happens to be about the color of the artwork, because the way we collect records, right? We slide them in between 2 black records or colorful records. And so I got this. I think I paid $80 for both these records, which I'll show you the second one in a second. It's not as rare. This is very rare. The most rare Phil Collins record that is like an official release, correct me if I'm wrong, is Dance Into the Light. Most rare Phil Collins record that is like an official release, correct me if I'm wrong, is Dance Into the Light. That does exist. There's a two disc copy of that out there. I think the cheapest I've ever seen it is like $500. You let me know if you have it, or you let me know. I mean, remember, we've talked about vinyl all the time on this channel. By the time But seriously was at the absolute end of vinyl in the mainstream. People had moved on to CDs, but the majority of people had cassettes. The majority of like middle class America, North America, it was cassettes, and some people had CDs. And so But Seriously was on vinyl. It's not too hard to find But Seriously on vinyl. Although it had like a throwaway track listing, it wasn't the official track listing. But yet it was still released on vinyl. Whereas after that, when we get to We Can't Dance, the band kind of gave up on vinyl. It wasn't the primary format. If you find We Can't Dance in a record store, it's most likely on cassette or CD. Those are super easy to find. But to find We Can't Dance on vinyl is extremely difficult. And then after that, we have Both Sides, which is very hard to find. And it gets harder and harder to the point where Testify was never done on vinyl at all. A Hot Night in Paris, also not done on vinyl originally, but then eventually would be done on vinyl as part of that kind of like 2016, 2017, 2018 remaster period. So this record is really hard to find, and this record is also really hard to find. Now, the ironic thing about all this was that I placed the order for this record. Why did I get 2 copies? Well, I'm greedy, for one. I wanted an original copy because it has different artwork. It's also, to me, a connection. It's a connection to 1993 and 1994 when people were listening to this record. I wasn't listening to this record. I was too young. Well, I wasn't too young, but I was becoming a teenager, and I was out of the Phil world for a little while. So this, to me, is a connection to like somebody bought this and somebody listened to this at the kind of like the prime of this record. And I just, that's how nostalgia works. It kind of connects you back to that time. The other thing is like, I do want multiple copies of every record. And I've been bringing some of my records up to our family cottage so now I've been buying like duplicate copies of most of my records, usually just cheaper versions. I bought like $10 versions of Face Value and No Jacket Required, just to have a second copy up there. So will I be bringing this up to the cottage? Probably not, actually, because it's kind of rare. And I don't know. Anyway, I still would love to grab another copy of this if I find it, if I get lucky. And I think it's possible. You could find it in a record store where if they're just selling the copy, they bought it from the retailer 5 years ago and nobody's come around and bought it. I mean, that's possible. But if they've checked on Discogs, they know it's super expensive. So that's kind of unlikely. Okay. The ironic thing was that a couple days after I placed this order, they announced the deluxe edition. Now, the deluxe edition isn't perfect, although it does come with the original artwork. But it's not perfect because it's massive, right? It's $200 and something. It's a massive box. It has some unnecessary tracks on it, in my opinion. Will I buy it? Probably. But it's insane. And they're not doing just a regular pressing of the record. I think they should, and they might down the road, but it would probably cannibalize the big box set because people want to own both sides on vinyl. But especially I've talked to some of you who missed the 2016 pressing. So if you missed that and you want both sides on vinyl, you'll probably begrudgingly pay $250, or maybe you'll be like me, you'll go on Discogs and pay like $80 for this. Would I have placed this order if I knew the box set was coming? Maybe not, because then I would have used that money towards the box set, which I was probably going to buy anyway. Okay. Record number 2. And I got to give a shout out to my friend Sean here, and you'll know why in a second. These 2 records I'm talking about are not the most popular in the Phil and Genesis space, but to me, they're nostalgic because they come from my like prime childhood. And they're also nostalgic to me as well they're important to me because they're so hard to find. And they're just kind of a cool connection to that era. So the other record I picked up from the same seller was We Can't Dance on vinyl. Now, this is an original pressing. And it's so interesting because, and I want my friends out there to tell me the difference, because this pressing is different than the one that my friend Sean gave me. Now, let me show you the record I've always had. This is from 2018. This is a very new pressing. I think it has maybe Nick Davis worked on this. This was part of the, all of the reissues. It's not even really a reissue. This is common. It's still available today on Amazon. You can get this record. And for some bizarre reason, they just announced that they're doing more Genesis records without changing them in any way on black vinyl. So that copy, it's got glossy cover. This is like the record that anybody can get for $40 on Amazon today. Having an original pressing, because remember I told you, but seriously, kind of the end of the vinyl era, both We Can't Dance, very hard to find on vinyl. Both sides, also very hard to find on vinyl. I have never, except for the story I'm going to tell you, I told our patrons, I have never found We Can't Dance on vinyl in a record store until just a couple days ago. And I'll tell you that story in a second. But, so my friend Sean, who's one of our patrons and been a great longtime viewer of the show, sent me a copy of, and I did a video, so go back and watch that. He sent me an original pressing of We Can't Dance, bless his heart, as well as a cool copy of No Son of Mine on 12-inch, which I cherish, and a couple other things. It's an incredible package. Go and watch that video. It's a mystery box on our channel. The reason I got this is for a couple reasons. I wanted more copies. I'm greedy. It was actually priced fairly. It was like $30 or something, and bundling it with the Both Sides record, the whole thing was like $80 after shipping. So it was kind of a no-brainer. I can't have enough of these records, in my opinion. So here's what's weird. I want you to tell me, because this is from 1991. This is a pressing from 1991. Now, I don't think these would have been pressed in America. I just do not know where these came from at the time or who was buying We Can't Dance on vinyl. And the record that Sean, and maybe Sean can speak to this or where he got it, but the record that Sean sent me has a kind of a smoother cover. It's not as high contrast and vibrant as this 2018 version, but it's glossy, whereas this is matte. You can't see this, or you probably can't tell, but this is a matte cover. You could almost color on it if you want. We call it in the industry reverse board, because if you feel on the inside, it's semi-gloss. And so that means they printed on the reverse side, which gives it a cool kind of crafty feel to it. So this record, I don't know why, is kind of that nice papery feel, whereas the record that Sean sent me, also an original pressing, has a little bit more of a semi-gloss feel. So that means that the We Can't Dance vinyl was pressed at two different plants at two different times in 1991. Maybe Sean can speak to it. Maybe it's a UK version. Maybe this is a North American version, although I ordered this was actually from, Croatia. I can't remember where. I think it's Croatia, where I ordered these from. So this is not a North American pressing, I don't believe. There is no 1991. There's like no printing information. It's Virgin Records. I don't have the record that Sean gave me. I don't have here because it's up at the cottage, because I have two copies. So I'm going to be taking this up, bringing the Sean one home, because that's kind of meaningful. And then I'll have two copies. So yes, now I will have 3 copies of We Can't Dance on vinyl. That's a lot. And some of you go, well, why would you even want to have one? This is a meaningful record to me. It's nostalgic. I got it on cassette when I was a kid in 1991 with a Sony Walkman. So you can probably tell how meaningful that is. So these are the 2 records I got. We Can't Dance and Both Sides. Very meaningful records. It's so great to get them on original vinyl. Let me tell you a story real quick before I let you go. I love going to record stores. I love buying vinyl. Probably my favorite thing is to go to a new record store, because it shows it has the promise of something that you've never seen before. It's mysterious. What could be in this in these bins I've never seen before? You could find some record collecting, and collecting of any sort is about the hunt. Once you get a record home, you listen to it once and then it goes on the shelf, and that feeling's kind of gone away. Of course, you revisit your collection, or I stare at my whole collection, but it's the hunt that feels great. And so when I'm getting out of the car, walking into a record store I've never been in before, there's a potential that there are 1,000 Genesis records and Phil Collins records that I've never seen in my life before, sitting in a box waiting for me to explore. That's a potential. There's a potential that there's a lot of cool records that I've never seen before sitting there. And that's such a great feeling. 9 times out of 10, I walk into a record store, they don't have anything for me, and I leave, and it's a little bit disappointing. It's okay. It's all part of the experience. But there are times where I see a hole-in-the-wall record store. I walk in. This happened to me 3 years ago, and there was about 6 or 7 Genesis bootlegs all sitting there, And I didn't even know these existed. It was before I was familiar with bootlegs, and it blew my mind. I did a video recently. I walked into a record store. They didn't have anything I was interested in until I found a 7-inch collection, and there was like 20 Genesis 7-inch records, 30 Peter Gabriel Genesis 7-inch records to discover. Anyway, I find on Instagram near where my in-laws live, out in the country, there's a guy who has a record store in his garage that he only opens up on Saturdays. That's kind of bizarre. It's not a record store. It's just his personal record collection with some other records he's brought in. It's in a garage, smaller than a garage. There's got to be maybe 300 records there. It's very, very small. It's only open during the summer in a tourist town. It's not a true record store. It's a record experience. So I found this on Instagram. I just kind of stumbled upon it, and I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to be in the area on an actual Saturday that he's open. It's like one Saturday a month that he's open. So I was like, I'll go there. I told this story to our patrons, by the way, a couple of weeks ago. So I go there to check them out. Immediately I walk in. It's a very small shop. The chances of me finding something are slim to none. And I flip through everything. I go to the G section. I go to the P section, the C section. And there's the usual suspects, a couple cool Genesis Phil Collins records, but I have them. I flip through everything else. It was a great experience. I mean, I love it. I do it no matter what. I ended up buying, funny enough, like a second copy of Phil Bailey's Chinese Wall, because I love that record, and they had it for $5. So I bought a second copy to take up to the cottage because I do love that record. As I was checking out, behind the guy, the owner, behind the cash, sitting on a stool, behind another record, a stack of records, leaning face out on the stool, and literally, this is what I see. Literally, see that? So imagine another record, Dark Side of the Moon, whatever. Another record here, and this. What do you do? What do you do if you see that? Do you know what that is? If you were to see that from afar, do you know what that is? So I see this. I know exactly what it is. I said, what is that? I went from like friendly shopper to like, holy crap, I just found something. What is that? Now listen, I know that We Can't Dance is hard to find on vinyl. It's pretty rare to even find the 2018 version in a record store. Why? Because it's available on Amazon. It's not like super common. It's not one of the most favorite, well-loved Genesis records like Selling England or The Lamb. So there's not that many copies of it out there. And anybody who does go and buy it off of Amazon or new from a retail store is probably not going to sell it back to an indie record store. They probably bought it because they're trying to complete their collection. So there's not going to be very many used new copies of We Can't Dance out there. But I knew it wasn't the 2018 version because it was matte. It was on reverse board. It wasn't semi-gloss. It wasn't gloss. It wasn't high contrast like this one, as you can tell. How high contrast that is compared to this. And I knew it. I just knew exactly what it was. And I was like, what is that? So he showed me it was We Can't Dance. It was not this exact copy, but this type of copy, the matte version. And he was holding it for another customer. Another customer was coming by. He doesn't know where he got it from. He was selling it for $20 or something. I was like, dude, you're totally not charging enough for this. I was like, I got to have it, man. You can't hold that. I got to take that home. Like, of course I have the copy that Sean bought me, and I also have a 2018 copy, but scoring in the wild was just mind-blowing. I mean, listen, if I came across a both sides original copy out there, if I came across I have come across recently Serious Hits Live original copy, but I already have that. So I didn't buy that. It was about $100 too. That was overpriced. If I came across like Dance Into the Light. Oh my gosh. I mean, that would be insane. So anyway, I got the story's over. I said to him, like, I got to buy this copy off you. So I make him call the customer that is supposed to be coming in to pick up this record. He calls the customer. He comes back into the store. He's like, yeah, the guy really wants it. He's going to be coming in today. I told him he had to come in today. So I gave the guy my phone number. I said, listen, if he doesn't end up coming, I'll come back and get this. I never heard from him. It's a shame. It's really a shame. But it was fun. I mean, that's like probably one of my most exciting record store stories. And I have other ones. And that's why I go to a record store almost once a week. And I get tired of the ones in my hometown because they can't change the inventory as often as I go in there. So I know what they have, and some of the records that I'm interested in could sit there for years without anybody else being interested in them. You know what I mean? Like some bizarre Tony Banks record, I know if I don't buy it today, it'll be there in 6 months from now. No offense, Tony. But the same's true for, Buster or Philip Bailey or whatever. Anyway, so if I go to a new town, I go to a new record store because there's that potential for an incredible discovery. And going to a record store once a week yields probably 2 times a year where I discover something mind-blowing and I make a video about it. But it doesn't happen very often. 2 times a year is maybe even generous. And that's why I often will get hungry to get something rare and exciting. And that's why I resort to Discogs, even though I don't love it. And I mean, Discogs is cheaper because I negotiate a little bit if I'm buying multiple records, and I negotiate. Anyway, let me know in the comments, what do you think about my new records? Do you have an original copy of both sides on vinyl? Do you have a copy of the 2016 version on vinyl? Do you have an original copy of We Can't Dance on vinyl? And do you have a new copy of We Can't Dance on vinyl? Let me know what you think about these scores. I will always share my vinyl collection with you. Thanks for watching.